Good afternoon, folks. It's Monday afternoon, day 72, and we are going to have a look at a couple of things today. We've got one little thing to polish off regarding our crafting widget, and then we're going to have a quick look at optimization. So, let's take a look, shall we? Now, I've got one little thing to do with this still. But you can see there that we can craft, and now when we actually craft, we get a nice little thing, and then that slides in. So that was pretty much exactly what I was hoping for, and it should, the way it's done, work in any slot. So if I pick this, right, and then we do it, it's going to go into slot 2, right? So we do basically the same thing again, and ka-ching, and ka-ching, right? So you'll have noticed there, the one, well, if you're eagle-eyed, you'll have noticed the one thing that we need to do here, and that is basically there is a widget that we need to do something with. Well, we need an alternative widget. Okay, so I'll show you again. You'll notice that this changes to, well, basically it updates the inventory, right? Which means that we've none of these anymore. And then it adds what should be a blank space, but at the moment it puts the default item in it. Okay, so you'll see that. So you'll see there. Okay, so that's the final piece of the puzzle, and that is, funnily enough, exactly how I envisioned it working, which is quite the thing. So what we're going to do here is we're using inventory items, right? Okay, we're using inventory items. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our not inventory items. Actually, are we? No, it's not in there. It's going to be in the inventory, right? So here is our inventory slot, right? So what we're going to do with that is we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to call it craft inventory blank. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move it into the correct directory. Okay, so now we can go back in here, we can go into here, and basically we're going to be deleting a lot of stuff. That's about the tall and the short of it. Right. So we're going to be deleting all of that. And that. And basically all of this as well. Okay. And fundamentally, we can delete everything out of here as well. Apart from image size, we'll leave that. Alright, delete that. Delete that. Alright. So we are going to have an event construct. What we're going to do with that event construct, I don't actually know yet. But anyway, so we're going to go into our designer and we're going to take that out. This button isn't going to do anything, so that's fine. We're going to save that. We're going to go back to our graph, right? And we are going to go into our maybe that was a bad idea to do that. Probably not actually. We get the button item and we set the style. Okay. And this is going to be fairly straightforward. We're going to make a style. These are all going to be the same. Right, so what we're going to do here is make that, and we're going to drag that in. Okay, we're going to have no image, and our tint is going to be basically that, nothing. Okay. Close that down. Compile that. And then in our I think it's our crafting progress. Let's have a look. It's I believe it might be in here actually. No. So it must be when we hit our crafting item. Right, so it's going to be in the button for here. Right, so when we craft this item, and it's going to be in here. Right. And right, if it's true, we are not creating the inventory slot. We're going to be creating W craft inventory blank. Okay. And we refresh that. Okay. And there we go. Now, the we're going to have to deal with a problem here, right? That if this has got a quantity, right? If that is true, and this is greater than 0, well, we want that to be true as well. So we're going to have to figure out a way of getting that so that both of these can be true and it can go up there, okay? And then if not, we can go to here. Okay, but we need to set this as well if we're doing that. Okay, so we'll work on that in a minute. We don't need this anymore, so we can take that away, compile that, and let's try it. I'm not worried about the logic here, it's really just the formatting of this button to the right size, etc. that it should be. Right. Right, so when we press, it's not doing that. Yeah, it is. There we go. Beautiful. Can't sphere on that, guys. You want to start again? I want to see it again, but I want to see it with logs this time so it moves into position 2. Right. Oh. Take that. Take that. There we go. That is pretty much exactly how I envisaged that to go exactly how I expected. Okay, so while I was getting that all to work, one of the things that we also had been discussing was optimization. Okay, and basically what we found was we had an optimization issue. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this in standalone mode now, so that I can get some numbers to let you guys see the sort of basics of optimizing and stuff. Okay. And then we'll take a look at the profiler. Now, what one has to remember here is I hadn't done any optimization stuff for a year, so I've basically forgotten most of it. I kinda know some of it, but some of it not. Now you'll notice there that our Steam thing is working, so we're ready for some Steam. And so, first thing we do is we bring up some stats, right? And the way we do that is we hit the tilde, which is the button to the left of the number 1 at the top, not on the keypad, the one in the top row. So it's the very furthest left below escape. Okay, and that brings up a command prompt. Next thing we do is we press stat space FPS, and you'll notice now we have an FPS rating and the number of milliseconds it's taken. Okay. So if one divides 1000 by that 19 milliseconds, then you basically get 52, right, which is the frame rate. Okay, so if you want to run at 60, we need the milliseconds to be 15. Okay, that's the way it works. So with that in mind, we want one more little thing here to start with for the basics, right? We hit our tilde key again and we type in stat unit. Okay, and now that gives us some more lovely numbers. So we've got frame, game, draw, CPU, dynamic resolution unsupported, draws, and primitives. Okay, and that tells us what it's doing. Now the thing that we're really interested in, and the thing that's going to tell us the most information, is basically the frame, game, draw, and GPU. Okay, now the frame is just basically the highest out of the game, draw, and GPU. The game is like all the code that is running at the moment. Okay, like all of our ticks, if we had any loops, any timers, any, anything like that, and any obvious background processes, right? And the next one is our draw, which is basically how fast we can get the data to the GPU and the GPU should equal the draw unless our GPU can't handle all the draw. Hi Quasi, how you doing, bud? Nice to see you pop by. So from here we can see that our game is actually running at over 60 frames a second, and our game is only taking up between 7 and 8 milliseconds, which is pretty good. So if we were to do the calculations, right, and I'll bring it back in a second, right, so we're saying 8 milliseconds, right? So if we did 1000 divided by 8, if we were just going on purely game code alone, we could be running at 125 frames a second. Okay? But obviously we're not, right? And we can see here, if I get it in there, so we can see that our draw is 16 milliseconds, right? Or yeah, it's dodging between 15 and 17. So 15 gives us our 60 frames a second, right? But we can take two further actions here. We can actually find out what is stopping our game. Right, we know it's the GPU, because the GPU is taking double the time of the game. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to hit tilde again, and we're going to say profile GPU. Okay? Now that takes a slice in time, okay? Because you'll notice that this draw has went right down to 1.1. Right, but if I click on the game again, it will go back up. This is a little quirk of nature. Right, I don't know why it does that, but we're not going to concentrate on that. As I said, it's a quirk of nature. Don't know why it does that. But we can now have a look at this. In fact, if you give me a second, I shall make it a bit bigger for you guys. That would be advantageous. I could actually go 1.4 here. Right. And go back to our visualizer. And our visualizer didn't get any bigger, which is fantastic. So there was absolutely zero reason to do that. But here's the next thing. We can see now what's taken up the time. Okay? So we can see that the world tick is taking up 9.3 milliseconds, and our scene was taking up 14.65. Now, some of this might actually have been, some of these might actually be together, right? Because I don't think we were ever at 23 milliseconds. If you remember rightly, we were hovering between 15 and 17, right? So I'm taking it from that some of these are actually combined, right? But what we can do is we can now open that up. And then because we've got it sorted, we know that all of this stuff is taking no time at all, so that's not an issue. 0.01 milliseconds, that's not an issue, right? Even up to 1 millisecond wouldn't be an issue if it was just one thing. But look, we've got 3 here that's taking up 1.63, 1.71, and 4.98. Okay. Now, one of them is post-processing. Okay. And again, we can have a look to see what one it is, and it's... What one is it? Apparently... Ah, right, okay. There's this processed material, this post-processed material, and 0.06 is just a drop in the ocean. We've got a motion blur. Now I think that motion blur is actually coming off the camera, okay? Because we've got the camera set up to do a little motion blur, which somebody thought was a big huge frame drop in our video, but it actually wasn't. It was actually the motion blur. Well, it was a mixture of the motion blur on the camera plus the camera does a little delay to give it the effect of a little more smoothness, but it if you're not used to the way the camera works and looks, then it looks like a big stutter, but it's not really, right? But anyway, so we've got this post-processed material here. It's taken up 0.22, and we've got this one. So really, there ain't an awful lot we can do with this, but what we can see is it's actually the ocean, right? It's telling us there that it's a material M underscore under ocean. Okay, so if that's using a 2K material or a 4K material, right, we could actually go in there and probably bring the resolution of that material, and that would probably affect this, right? Not saying by how much, but it gives you a clue, right? It's giving you a clue what you've got to be looking for, okay? So the post-processing wasn't a huge deal really. You're expecting some, at least. I would have probably expected a bit more. We've got volumetric fog, and we've got a directional light function, which isn't a problem either. It's this one here, light scattering, right? Again, we can look at this. It's got SS4, right? So that's going to depend on your quality settings, right? So if we turn down our quality settings, we could probably bring this down, and our ambient occlusion as well. We could do something with our ambient occlusion settings if we wanted to bring this down, right? But it's 0.6, it's not that bad. And basically this directional light is nothing. That's not an awful lot. Don't think we can do anything about those two. I think that's the only one we can do anything with, right? Even if we wanted to, right? But basically you can just go through these, okay? So we've got this one here, this shadow depth, right? Now I know for a fact that this is going to be the reason that I ended up starting doing optimization, because my colleague let me know that for some reason now, when he opens the map after he's been doing some world composition, his frame rate tanks, right? So he asked me to investigate, and basically that's what I did. And we found out that we've got 5 milliseconds here, which is the equivalent of that would basically take off, oh, brains went dead. If we could run at 5, it's basically taking right, if we could run at 1,000 frames a second, right? Let me put it this way. 5 milliseconds would cut that down to 800, right? Now, obviously, as your frame rates come down naturally because of all the processing it's doing anyway, it doesn't have quite the same drastic effect, but I'm just giving you an idea, right? So, if we have a look at this, what's this one? Well, it's the ultra dynamic sky, right? And there's 2 of these whole scenes that are taking up all, just about the whole 4.9 seconds. It's taken up 4.6. Okay, so we know that this asset is costing us 5 milliseconds. Right, now if we want to run at 60 frames a second, right, that's 33%. Okay, so just think about that. Right, if you want to run at 60 frames a second, which is at 15 milliseconds, right, this is taking up 4.63 milliseconds on its own. Okay, so we'd have to have a look at something here, and it's this Atlas thing, right? So what we could do is we could go in and have a look to see what is causing the problem. Now, on shadow depths, right, this is obviously coming off light, right, because it's shadows, right? Now, another problem might not be this, okay? Hi, Disney's. What it could be, but I've already checked and it's not, is one of your models, like your grass or something, could be casting shadows. Okay, now if you've obviously got a crap ton of grass and they're all doing shadows, you've got a problem. Okay, so that's one thing to check out for. Right, next thing to check out for is your LODs, right? Make sure that you're using LODs. If anybody doesn't know what LODs are, let me know and I'll try and explain it. LOD is level of detail, by the way, right? So that's a little caveat there. So we can take a look at this, as I said, and we can identify problems that we really want to target here, right? But we know that it's something to do with this dynamic sky, and we know that it's something to do with shadow depths. So I couldn't find anything earlier, but I'll just show you what I would normally have done anyway, right? Because that makes kind of sense in the case of this is like a detective story. You know, we're doing a detective story regarding optimization, and this is what you've got to do. You've got to hunt down the issues bit by bit and basically sort it out, right? Now, the first thing I would do in this case would be looking for any settings here that are like ultra. Right, these are all time of day and stuff like that. Volumetric clouds. Right, now, remember we had a volumetric issue earlier, right? So what we'd probably do, this option is good for situations when the camera goes up into the clouds. No, it doesn't do that. This option is best for typical situations where clouds are only seen for the ground. Right, okay. Apparently it's broken. And Unreal Engine 5, which is why we're not moving. Another reason why we're not going to 5 at the moment. Right, so we can't do anything that, but I'm sure there's maybe something in here. Distance to sample would maybe increase and reduce sample count. Right. Shadow sample. Right. We could probably do something there. Like, let's muck about with this and do 0.4 for a laugh. And we could do the same here. Right. Right, we'll not worry too much about that one. Right, now, so the interesting thing here would be to start it up again. I think it's actually still running, yeah, I thought it was. That's going to save anyway. Right, so if you remember rightly, we were running at about between 15 and 17 frames per milliseconds, right? So I don't know how much, maybe I'm probably not even expecting any change here. I would probably have to bang these down to like 0.1 or something. And even then it might not make a huge difference. But the point is that you're just trying to chop a millisecond here, a millisecond there, right? You're obviously going to concentrate on the ones that are, you know, the ones that are obviously the processes that are taking up more milliseconds. But any millisecond you can chop here or there and not sacrifice anything to the game, then is obviously preferable, right? So we can just go start FPS. That gives us our frame rate. Then we can do that again and say start unit. That gives us that. And you'll notice that it's not really made much of a difference. We're still kind of round about the same. We're still running at about really we should look in a particular direction when we're testing as well. Okay. We should always be kind of looking in the same direction. You'll notice that our draws went right down now. Okay, our draw's down to 14. And if we look at the house, our draws went up to 19. So I would have to conclude, I've got a sore eye. Hi, young Minkin. So we'd have to conclude that this hasn't been merged very well, or it's using big textures, or a combination of those different things, right? Because your our draw's down to 15 now, right? So not bad at all, right? So well, yeah, we're clocking in just over the 60 frames per second mark. Okay. So yeah, that's good, right? So I'm going to escape that for now. And what we're going to actually do here is I'm going to go for it, right? I'm going to go 0.1. And see what effect that has. And I've not stopped the game again. Right. We've got one more thing to look at, well, two more things to look at after this one regarding optimization. And this is just the basics of optimization, by the way. This is by no means in depth, and there's, as far as I know, there's a few tools out there that you can get for free as well that help you out. So, you know, you start off macro, you know, like with LODs, merging actors, checking that the assets where there seems to be a problem or whatever, and then you gradually just go sort of more and more micro, looking for issues, you know. As I said, you're trying to, every millisecond helps. And tilde that, start unit. That's going to give us our numbers again. And you'll notice that we're right down now to 14s, 15s and 16s. That takes us up again, but this is exactly what it did the last time. Right, now that might be something to do with displacement in the snow as well. Well, actually no, it's not, because we're now down steady 14s. Right, we're up to 18 when we're looking at this house. We're dropping again. Right, there's definitely... Now, you can't expect it to be able to draw more complicated stuff without taking a little bit of a hit, okay? But what I'm thinking here is if this was possibly an instanced, I'm not sure if this is an instanced mesh or not, right? But maybe if this was an instance mesh, we would get better performance. Right, but you can see there we're getting it down to 13. We're nearly up at 70 frames a second now. Okay. So I wouldn't say conclusively, right? I wouldn't say conclusively, but I think that did have an effect. It's just really, really difficult to tell sometimes, to be fair, right? But as I said, I'm just showing you here how we can go about looking for issues, right? And I don't know what they're doing outside. It's beyond me. I think they just make noise as soon as I go live just to piss me off, but anyway. Right. To the... So I can't see anything there. It's going to be cloud. Use cloud shadows. You see, if we turn that off, that would probably make a difference as well. Right? Because if you remember rightly, it was something to do with the... I'm going to turn that off, right? And let's have a look to see what that does, if indeed anything. Right, okay. So, yeah, this is as I said, it's just like a Sherlock Holmes thing. You've got to hunt down the murderer, the guy that murders your FPS, right? And see if you can find out, pinpoint exactly where it is that it's going wrong. And if you can do that, then you're going to have a fairly smooth game on your hands. Or you can look at it another way. You can look at it that if you're only targeting 30 frames a second, right, then you'll be able to put more stuff on the screen, right? If you can optimize it enough that you've got, you know, these examples, like, right, we'll work back to the 60 frames a second example, right? If you can get it down to 10 milliseconds, right, that means you can either make your game code more complex so it can take the extra milliseconds, or you can throw more stuff on the screen to make up the 5 milliseconds, right? So even if your game is running at 60 frames a second, you should always be considering doing this, right? So that, you know, either A, the game will run smoother all the time, or B, you can actually start putting effects back in that you had to take out before because it wasn't optimized, right? So if we run this again, let me see, start FPS. Look at that. Look at it now. It's already at 70 odd. Now the question is, did that really make that much of a difference to us? You know? You'd have to have a look. You'd have to take a couple of screenshots of the sort of before and after, but you can see right there, we're in the 70s, right? So we'll hit tilde again, and we'll say stat unit. Remember guys, the stat unit gives us all those little numbers down inside. And you'll notice that we're now steady 12s, 13s, 14s, we're hitting 76 frames a second at times here. Right? Now you got to remember as well, guys, these are all trade-offs, okay? You're trading off, you know, little graphical embellishments or little effects or a little bit better lighting or a little bit of this, or if you're lucky, you know, you might not be actually sacrificing anything. You know, if you find out that it's a material that's using like a 4K material and you get pretty much 95% the same result with a 2K material, then obviously that's going to be a win-win, right? But, you know, you'll probably find that either A, you're trading something off against graphical fidelity, but it's going to be, you know, a balancing act that you guys can decide for your game yourself. But you can see there I'm now steadily hitting 70 frames a second, right? My game time is 7.5 milliseconds to 8, so that is perfectly acceptable. In fact, as I said before, we worked that out earlier, that's about what? It was 120 frames a second? Something like that? It would be, if we could get our draw down to 10 frames a second, you would see your frame rate go up to 100, right? Now, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. But, so what we'll do is we'll stop this for now, right? Because we're quite happy with the results so far. Okay. And we're going to stop that just now. Now, I'm going to have to send my colleague a message here to tell him not to touch. Right, so we can continue on with this. Now, what I was going to do here was, remember we turned these use cloud shadows off, right? But remember, we had these settings up here somewhere. Can't remember where they were. It was this up here. The shadow sample scale and the shadow trace distance, right? If we turn these also down to 0.1 and 0.1, right? This is going to maybe even push us faster. It might be just, as I said, it might be just, you could get to the point where all you need is one frame, right? Is that one frame that's going to keep you above 60. Or keep you above 30 or something. And that's what it could come down to in the end, right? So, simulation. Alright, okay, whatever. Right, so I don't think we're going to get anything out of that. These are just going to be calculations. So I don't think we're going to get anything out of that either. Moon angle. Moon... Oh, look at this. I'm wondering. Right, okay. I'm interested in this one. This moon volumetric scattering. Right, because I'm thinking if we turn this down, it might not do. Right, tell you what. As I said, you would need to take before and afters, right? All I'm trying to do here is get frames. Now, this one, we're not going to use that. And we're not going to use that. We've got this skylight cast shadows. Right, okay. Don't think that's going to give us anything. Now this might. Remember guys, when we were looking earlier, and there was the DFAO, ambient occlusion. Now I'm thinking that if we were to do something here, like tighten it up to 0.3, 0.6, that might actually do something for us. But I'm kind of scared with that one. Real-time capture. Real-time allows. Right, so that looks like it is the. It does not support volumetric fog, which would suggest that it's the less costly in terms of performance. Right? I'm guessing this might have an effect as well. But as I said, I don't want to change too many of these. I want to try and remember them so I can put them back if I need to. I'm just wanting some really obvious ones that I can actually change. Right, this is disabled, so we don't need to really worry about that, I don't think. And neither is that. I think we can forget that one. Right, and I think that's us coming to an end. That's all the. Right, so we'll try it where we were. Right, and if you remember rightly, we've got the two different things, or the 3 or 4 different things that we've done that might actually buy us a frame or two. But again, it's a balancing act, remember. What we're going to gain in frames, we're going to lose in graphical flourishes and quality. Right? So basically, always balance and act. And what's going on here? Things have went mad. I believe we crashed. Well, that was a bit bonkers. Oh well, never mind. We did something wrong, obviously. Right, well anyway, I'm going to go and grab a cigarette, guys. If you're enjoying the stream, hit like and subscribe. I'll be back in about 4.5 minutes. So check the description for links to the game's Discord, my personal Discord, Patreon, and my previous game on Steam. I'll be right back, don't go anywhere folks. Okay guys, we're back. Is our program back though? Apparently. We'll open that for now anyway. Right, now I don't know what changes I've lost now, which is ideal. It did tell me to save it, didn't it? Right, wait a minute. This was it here, still at 0.1.1. Right, so I'm afraid I'm quite scared to hit the play button here in case it all goes pear-shaped again. Oh, which reminds me, Everton are playing Liverpool, aren't they? Right, well that's loading up, we'll get the footy up. Well, the score anyway. Right, I can't see the score yet. My half-time prediction is 1-1. Right, and while we're at it, we're going to press play. And sport and football. It's 2-0 to Liverpool. Well, I'm not surprised either way, to be honest. But that'll be a huge relief to the Liverpool fans. Right. Is this going to start, or is it just going to stand and look at me? It's already started. It's not waiting on. It's not waiting around on. That just crashed again. No, it didn't. Right. I don't know why it's doing that. I have no idea why it's doing that. So we're going to go start FPS. Oh, that was hitting 80s there, if one saw that. Right, start unit. Look at that, we're down to 12. We're down to consistent 12s. And so what we can do is, if we look at it, right, remember, get our calculator out, right? So we're looking at 1,000 divided by 12. Oh, blew that. 83. Right? So if we can keep it down at 12, but you can see there we are hitting a steady 12. I'll put that over the house for you. Right? The house has lifted up our frame rate a little bit. Don't know if you guys can see that. Let me know if you can see that. But when we look into the distance, we are getting a nice 8. Yeah, we're probably getting about 80 frames a second here. Right? What do you think, guys? You think I should go for the ambient occlusion thing and see what happens? Or do you think I'm pushing my luck? it's about the only thing that we can really do now as far as this is concerned. We've went through every setting, and there's nothing now any more obvious than the stuff we've done. Okay? So the only thing we could really do now is, well, there's our shadow sample state scale, right? So where was that? Occlusion stuff. Was it under here? Yeah, it was the moon, wasn't it? Or was it? Ah, we turned this right down, didn't we? We turned down the moon volumetric scattering. That's what we did. Right? I'm also thinking, maybe not. Skylight cast shadows. I think we would get to the point though that we'd have no blooming shadows. So that's maybe, I hear it, right? So if we turn this down, right, if we turn it up, I think it'll be worse. I think we need to turn the occlusion down to get a better result, so that it'll occlude things closer, right? Because it's a distance field, right? So the way we're going to get a better result is to occlude things closer to us, right? So if I go 0.1, now obviously if you're doing this in a professional manner, right, and as I'm saying, I'm using this as just a bit of an example for you guys out there, for you guys if you're interested, right, is you would be using this in conjunction with the profile GPU, and you'll notice that what we had earlier, we had the DFAO was an issue, right? It was taking up 4.63, right? Now if this is actually linked, now there's no guarantee that this is the ambient occlusion for that, right? It might be just a coincidence, but if it is, this might actually save us a frame or two. Again, it's going to be a trade-off, you know. Our ambient occlusion isn't going to be so good, but it's going to depend as well on the sort of scene you've got as well, right? The likes of this, if you're like set in a forest where you can only partly see the sky, you're probably not even going to see a difference, right? Whereas if you've got big open skies and plains, then it might make a big difference, right? So anyway, let's try that, shall we? I'm quite interested to see if this makes a difference, and what kind of a difference it actually makes, if any. Right, so it's saving everything first, which is good, because it saved me forgetting. I'll have a sip of my coffee while this is starting up. And if you guys have got any questions in the chat there, Right. So let's see what we've got, shall we? What do you guys think? Do you think we've made an improvement, or do you think it's going to be the same, or oh, yeah, that's worse. That's worse. Okay, well that number might be inverted then. It's always a possibility. It's coming down now though. But yeah, that number's went up, hasn't it? That number has went up. We're not quite hitting, I mean we're still getting 12s in that, but we're certainly getting higher as well. Right? So in theory guys, if we now we've got this number here, I wonder if we go 0.3. Now remember, that actually made quite a bit of difference. So if it makes quite a bit of difference going down the way, is it going to make the same kind of difference going up the way? That's the question. Or is it going to just cause us a problem? This is where we've got to try and kind of remember what I've got a backup with this this asset anyway. So let's see what we get, if indeed we get anything. Okay, what do you guys think? Start FPS and start unit. And it looks like we've got worse. Don't know how we've got worse, but we seem to have got worse. Alright, so it looks like that 0.2 is in fact the sweet spot. Right, I mean we are getting still steady over 60s and 70s, so that's pretty good. Seven knots, looking to be a paid developer. Who? Me or you? Right. So yeah, we're down at 12s and 13s again. So it does take a minute to kind of settle. Yeah, we're down at 12s. It's not any better, right? It's not any better than it was. Or it's certainly not significantly better, right? I don't get your question, whether you're referring to yourself or you're referring to me, Dev Knots. 7 knots. Right, so I think the thing to do here would, this one actually might make a difference as well, to be honest. What does it say? Skills the amount of absorbs reads pass through them. I suppose if you pump that up, you would get less coming through. Well, join my Discord and we can chat. And you'll find the link in the description. Right, so as a kind of final one before we move on to our 2 other little things regarding tools, or sort of the basic tools for optimization, right, that I'm going to show you. What we'll do is we'll put this up to like a nonsense number, right, like we'll go 0.6, right, so it was originally 0.2, we went to 0.1, didn't really, in fact made it worse. We went to 0.3, kind of the same. As I said, with the likes of this, you'll get to a point where it's not going to make any difference, right, either way. Or you're going to hit a sweet spot, and you know, if you push it any more it'll just get worse, and if you push it any higher it'll just get worse. So you need to keep an eye on what you're doing to make sure that you don't, that when you find a sweet spot, you write it down, or you remember it, or you save it, or you do something, right, so that you don't lose that optimized version you've got and end up back where you started, which would be kind of rubbish. Right, so as I said, this will be the last one we do for this. I think it's not making any difference really at the moment, but we'll certainly have a one more look. So as usual, start FPS, and we know that it starts off kind of lower, so we'll give it a little minute. Well, that's down. It's actually sitting at 14 right now. Right. Is it going to go down a bit? Ah, okay, 7 knots, no worries. I've got no problem speaking to anybody if they've got something I'm interested in. Right, we've got, I don't know if that's because he's running right in front of my face or not. Not. Yeah, it looks like this has made it worse. And by made it worse, I mean the frame rate. I don't necessarily mean made it. It probably looks better if you know what to look for. Right, but it's obviously worse from a optimization point of view, or our point of view, because we're now not even getting, well, we're kind of not, we're struggling around about the 60 frames a second, right, sometimes popping up, sometimes popping down, but it's certainly not as good as it was, right, because you guys will agree we had it at a fairly steady 12 to 14, in fact pretty low 12s to 13s. Okay, one of the next ones we can use is start game. Okay, now this is more to do with your game code. Okay, So you've got world tick time. Tick time. A lot of these will be fairly obvious what they're saying, right? Like, for example, blueprint time, character movement. You've got update overlaps. All of that kind of stuff. Right, player controller tick. And it looks like all our stuff is being taken up by world tick time, which is, as I explained before, is basically your timers, your event ticks, your timelines, anything that's using anything like that, and that's the world tick time. Okay, now there's practically zero. Okay, I'll rephrase that. I never add an event tick. Okay, so any event ticks that are in this game that you see right now were generated by either A, assets from the store or something, or obviously you can't get away with having zero, because obviously you've got your movement on tick, right? So you can't avoid that because it really has to be on tick, right? Because you want super smooth movement, you know, in your game, right? So you can't, so there's no way that you can basically have zero world tick time, right? Just impossible, right? And even if you had a basic overhead with absolutely zero ticks in it, it probably still wouldn't be zero, right? There'll be some underlying code that's the main thread, okay? So you've got to bear that in mind, right? Now, the likes of your components, I was just having to think about this one earlier, and what you have to make sure, if you can, is objects don't have sort of overlaps on them if they don't need them, right? Now that might sound fairly obvious, but it's pretty easy to overlook, so try not to overlook it, guys, right? Movement, you've got a move component, right? Here's another one, right? You might think to yourself, well, I've got a platform that moves, blah blah blah, there's nothing I can do about that. Well, maybe you can. Maybe if the player is X distance away, then you switch it off, right? And you save yourself some ticks, right? Again, might seem fairly obvious, but you might not have thought about that, right? So your overlaps, your movement, some of the stuff you won't be able to do anything about really, but take a look at that anyway. That gives you a brief overview of the, what do you call it? This is your stat game, right? Okay. Now the funny thing is here, I've got no idea how to switch this off, right? Because if you type stat game again, it doesn't go off. It might actually, you know what? It might be like stat. Right, I'm going to try that. Oh yeah, it does go off. Oh well. I tried that earlier and I must have typed it wrong or something. Right. Now, finally. And you'll need to do a little bit of experimenting yourself with this to get this to work how you want it to, right? But I'm going to show you how you get into it and the basic layout of it, etc, etc, because I have got a saved one, right? Now this is actually the profiler, right? Now the profiler is like you know how when we were doing the GPU profiler, how you could look and dive into the tree that showed you what actual things were taking time. Well, this is basically the same, but for the CPU. Okay. Now, how you get into it is, it's got a funny name, and it isn't Profiler. Right? You click on here, go to Windows, down to Developer Tools, and it's not Collision Analyzer or any of that stuff. It's called Session Front End. Okay? This one here, Session Front End. Okay? So you click on that and it all opens up. Right? And you'll notice we've got our profiler. Okay? Now, it's not got anything in it at the moment. Now, as I said, it's a year since I did this, and I was just basically doing some optimization or taking a look at stuff this morning after a year, so I couldn't exactly remember. But we have 4 sessions, right? So we have been doing some capturing today, right? And I think this is the one we want. Yep. So this is one is from 2 minutes ago, in fact. And the funny thing is, right, that it tells you to do that, but then it doesn't show anything. Right, it's as if it hasn't recorded. Now, don't worry, because normally when you do this, they actually save in your project, you know, under saved profiling. Right, now mine's aren't saving at the moment, and I don't know why. It's because I've not done it for a year, but I do have ones with stats in here so I can show you. Right, so we'll have a look at this one, and you'll notice that it loads in all the data. Right, so what does all this crap mean? Right, well, these are your frame rates, right? But it's the opposite. Okay, so the spikes are the frame rate going down. So this is like steady frame rate, right? Or steady game cycles, right? And then here you've got a huge spike. Right, so what you basically do is you get your spike and you drag it and basically cover your spike, and then that gives you all the different, like in the GPU, right, it gives us the time, right, that this took. Okay, now it seems to me that this is quite a long time, right? Let's just grab this bit. Yeah, it highlights them. Okay, it highlights them. No, Sev, it's blueprint until we come across a problem. I've identified a couple of things that I'm going to do in C++. There's a couple of things in the in the assets that we got from the marketplace that I've got quite a lot of calculations in them that are absolutely screaming out to be put into like a C++ function library. It's not going to be wholesale, but I'll do some of it. Right, so basically we can dive into these the same as we can with our GPU, right? So I'm going to grab a spike again, right? And let's have a look. So we've got game thread, right? And we can dive in here and we can take a look to see what's, and there's our, remember how our world tick time was big? It was the biggest. Well, I mean, this is for probably a completely different game, right? In fact, it might be for a completely different game. But it gives you an idea, right? So that before, when we were diving down into your GPU, we were looking at like things like ambient occlusion calls, we were looking at shadow depth calls, we were looking at stuff like that. If you remember just a couple of seconds ago, you can probably do it. I'm not going to, Schneider, I'm not going to guarantee you this, right? But the last time somebody asked me a question like this, all you need to do, or all you had to do, was go into the camera. And the camera's got different modes like black and white, this and that. And it might possibly have a wireframe mode. So I would go into your camera and check on like the lens and see what settings are on the lens. In fact, right, we'll come back to this in a second. Let's have a look for Schneider and try and help him out, because as I said, normally my streams aren't for me hardcore coding the game, even though I do code it, right? But it's for helping you guys out as well and just having a chat, so we don't mind that at all. And we can go back to that anytime anyway, we've got it saved. So we'll just have a look in our pawn. Right, and then we'll go to our camera. Now, you'll have to check what camera you're using as well, right? Because I don't know what the different versions of the camera is. There's a cine camera, there's a normal camera. So they might have different, actually, they might have different modes, that's what I'm trying to say. Right, so you can go to Explorer. Right. Right, even if we don't actually find the answer to this one, I've still got an answer, so don't worry. Alright, so we've got far, near, scale, transition range, blah de blah, right? Camera, shutter speed, ISO, aperture, maximum menu. I think we might, image effects, grain jitter, grain intensity. So we've certainly got a lot of things that we can add to it. Now, I've not found the one I'm looking for yet, I don't think. Temperature? Don't think this will be in here, but I want to see anyway. Global. Yeah, this is the one I used before. You can actually just make it a black and white camera. You can make a game black and white just by changing the saturation and the contrast, right? And I was hoping there was another setting, but it's just basically gave me an idea. Excuse me. right? We may as well check the other ones, see if there's that's the shadows. Right, these are the same things. But yeah, you can do that. Don't even know. Rendering features, now this might be interesting. This is probably what you're going to be dealing with, right? Because what I was going to say was, if it's not in here, then you would basically add a post-processing volume to your world, and then you would just apply it across the board on everything, right? You can do highlighting like that as well, right? I'm not doing the highlighting on this is not done by post-processing, but I have done a game in the past where it was actually post-processing. Okay, so basically you can add a post-processing material, right, which would be your wireframe material, which you would apply to all your objects in your game, and then you would just draw the post-processing volume right, around all your objects, and then basically this would be your thing here, right? As I said, I have got an example of it, but I don't think I can show you it right now because it's... Schneider, will you be here tonight at 8 PM in 4 hours time? Let me know, and if you are, I'll load up the other game and I'll show you in the other game how it's done, right? Because it doesn't use it for wireframe, but it could be wireframe, right? So all you need to do is get yourself a wireframe material, and then basically what you do is you add this material in here, and then in your world, right, you just set it to say it. But if you're here in 4 hours tonight, let me know and I'll load up the game, right? But that's the way, one way you do it, okay, with a post-processing volume and the material. Right, now I don't know if there's any other thing here that's going to help you. That's ray tracing, translucency is not really what you want. Again, miscellaneous, screen percentage, don't think that's going to help. Right, okay, so this is your, it's going to be with this, right? It's definitely going to be with your post-processed materials, okay? It's not going to be in the lens, we looked at that a minute ago, right? This is those, nothing here. Yep. It's going to be with, as I said, it's going to be with post-processing volume, and that's about that. I'll just save that again. 10:45 in the morning or 10:45 at night? I'm guessing you're in Western Europe, right? Because it's 9:45 in the UK. It's 3:45 where I am in the afternoon. If it's 9:45 in the UK, it's going to be 10:45 in Germany. So I'm guessing you're in Germany. Yeah, it would be night, yeah. Yeah. So, post-processing, Schneider, post-processing volume and material. Okay? So, basically, we've selected our section, right? And it's given us this here, okay? And this is basically breaking down so we're breaking down what's taking up the time in our game, right? Okay, Schneider, glad I could help, mate. Right, so we can look through this and we can see what is actually taking up the time in our game to do stuff, okay? Now, the one that everybody... There's a thing here that catches everybody out, and it caught me out as well, right? It catches everybody out when they first look at it, right? Because they'll go, okay, I'll probably not even see one here. Right, yeah, there we go. It'll say, CPU stall, wait for event. And you go, that's 1.466. And then, once you realise, that's not anything. That's basically telling you that it never did anything for 1.466 seconds, right? So it was basically waiting on work, right? But when you first open this up and you're looking at this, you're going, oh, I found the problem, it's CPU stall. What? My CPU stalled? Nah, it didn't. What it basically means is that your CPU is waiting for work. Okay, so that's a bit of a red herring. Okay, so you're really looking for things that actually, say like other task stalls. I would ignore that, right? But here's your actual stuff, right? This is your stuff. There you've got Niagara system instance tick current task. So that took 0.98, and then it, as I said, you can click on that and it shows you the calling function and the call functions, right? So you can dive deep here to find out what's taking time from. Remember, you've got GPU, and this is not it. This is your CPU. Now this tells you, actually, when you think about it, that this particle system is not running on the GPU. So it's a CPU particle system. So guess what, guys? Guess what you could do? Turn it into a GPU particle system, and that would basically remove this completely. Right? But remember, it's always a balance, guys. Because if you take it off your CPU, yeah, it might be faster on the GPU, but if your GPU is your sticking point, you're going to actually make your optimization worse. Okay? So, got to think about these things. But it just shows you what you can... If you think it through, we've got a Niagara task that's fallen on the CPU. So we've got a potential way of fixing it, right? If we have spare cycles in our GPU, okay? So that's one little example there. Let's see if we can find something else. Obviously, we ignored the stalls because that's it, just waiting for work. Right, we've got... Now, the thing about it is, as well, is you've got to remember that we will see graphical commands in here, because basically the CPU passes all the data to the GPU, right? So it's going to basically write all the commands and say, right, do this, do this, do this, big list of things to do, and then just go, here you go, GPU, do that, right? So there is going to be stuff in here that you'll have to look at, but you've got to realise where it's coming from, right? So some of these, like mesh draw commands, you know, and it becomes pretty obvious if you just read it. Mesh draw command, pass setup task, right? So it's a setup task. So it's doing something ready for it to pass to the GPU, right? Which is what the CPU does, right? Now, what we could take from that, if this was a draw command and we were getting a heck of a lot of these, then that would point to the fact that we've got too many draws, okay? So basically we can merge draws together. One of the ways is to merge actors, right? So if you've got like a village, let's say a village all set up, none of it's going to move, but it's made up of 25 actors, then you can basically set up those 25, you can select those 25 actors, merge them all together, and that's going to reduce your draw calls, okay? So it's going to reduce the amount of data that your CPU is going to have to write for the GPU to process, okay? I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about, don't I? Believe me, I don't. Right, but we use this pretty much in the same way as the GPU profile. We look for things that are anomalies, like they stick out like a sore thumb somewhere, and you might find that it'll be, you know, streaming, loading stuff, or doing something like file transfer runnable. Haven't an idea what this is, but at least it's going to give us an idea. Well, actually, wait a minute. No, it's not, because it's 50 milliseconds, 50.1 milliseconds over that time space, but only 0.001 was actually a task. The rest of it was sitting there waiting on something to do again, right? So, as I said, waiting for work. Then we've got this render, asset streaming, milk, MIP, calc, task. So again, excuse me, it's generating data for the GPU, and it's not that bad anyway, right? But your best idea when you're doing this, guys, grab yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, cup of beer, cup of whatever you drink, and just relax and just take your time and go through it, right? It's basically, it's not a fast thing. It's actually not a very boring thing, because you find out what's going on, right? And you can just relax and take your time, look through them. It just takes time. It's one of them things. Right, task stalls again, so that's no use to us. So there's something in there that's causing us a problem, but I don't know what it is. Right, so it's not that one, not that one. Waiting for event again. Waiting for the event again. It's not that one. Right. And a lot of the time these things don't actually give you much of an idea. They just give you a clue. You know, they don't necessarily point directly to a thing, right? But it's going to give you a clue. So you can see here we've got the render audio, so we know that there's something in the audio that's happening, that happened during this spike that was 0.294, right? Now, this might have been to do with, maybe not. this might have been something to do with the fact that it was loading in a sound or something, right? Which might be in another one of these, but this is why this ended up taking 0.264 or 294 or whatever it was, right? But this is obviously a bit bigger than some of the other ones. The other ones have been absolutely inconsequential, right? And this is obviously where it's happening, right? So we can click on that and we can see what this is, and I'm sure there's something you can find out exactly well, you guys can play with this and find your best way of doing it, right? But you can see here that, well, it looks to me like reverb. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? The reverb would be the thing that takes time, because that would be the processing, right? It would have to generate the reverb, so that makes sense, right? That wouldn't, so alarm bells wouldn't be going off there, right? Because obviously it's doing some signal processing, right? Now you might want to have a look at whatever it is that was playing at that particular time, and and have a look at it and see what effects are on it, if you decided that this was the thing that was causing the problem. But as I said, like with the GPU profiler, it's really just pointing you in the direction that you need to look. Right, and again we're on stalls and tasks again, and we've got a setup. So again, we've got generate dynamic mesh draw commands. Right, now that's saying to me that we need to merge actors. Right, now I would be able to tell at this point where I was in the game, right, because you could video it, right, and then you could go along and basically tie it to the video, right, so that you're moving along the video, and you could have the sound, right, so you'd know what sound was playing, so you could record it on the profiler, you could record it on OBS or whatever you use to record it, and then match them up and find out what was going on in the game, right, when this spike happened, right? You maybe walked into a village for the first time when this spiked, and you go, oh, we've got mesh draw commands, oh, that village should be a merged actor, right? So I'm just giving you what my thought processes would be. Maybe you've got a better way of doing it. Maybe there is a better way of doing it. Maybe there's another way of doing it that you're supposed to do that I don't know about. But that would be how I would go about it, right? And that's basically, there's other tools. I know there's other tools. I haven't used any other tools for optimization. But that today, I just wanted to give you an overview because I was working on it this morning. I had worked on it before, about a year ago, for my previous game, which is on Steam, by the way, remember. And I had to go through this to find out what was causing me a problem. Oh, I'm not a huggy person, I'm afraid. I'll give you a jolly good handshake. Anyway, I'm going to call it there for this afternoon. I hope you guys have enjoyed the stream. I've certainly enjoyed talking about optimization and re-familiarising myself with it. Actually, it's been good for me as well because I had forgot a lot about this. So it's been good showing you guys. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully Schneider gets his wireframe post processing effect. I'll speak to you 7-knots in a moment or two. And guys, check out the description for links to the game's Discord. There's also links to my personal Discord where I answer questions and try to help people when I can. There's also a link to my Patreon if you want to chuck a couple of bucks towards me, and there's also my previous game on Steam, which is a tower defense game, only $1. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you tonight, 8 PM Central. Bye bye for now.